Simple question, Gordon. How does this GPS stats thing work? How do you get from players running around on the pitch to all the stats we see on TV?
So the player will have located on their upper back one of these devices, and inside this device there's a number of components, microchips, processors, and one of the components is a GPS antenna. So that will be tracking the player's position using satellites that are circulating orbit in the Earth, and it will be tracking their position 10 times every second on the field, so it's very accurate. And what will then happen is the data, there's a number of calculations and processes that go on, and what then happens is the data will go from here to the side of the pitch over the airwaves to a tablet or a laptop or something, and it's received by a little box which will take that data in, and it will display it on the screen for coaches, for media, for sports scientists, strength conditioning coaches, whatever it is. Now, what we then do, which is the innovative part of all of this, is what we can now do is actually simultaneously push that data up to the cloud. So not only is the data coming in and being received to display locally, we can push it up to the cloud, and when it's in the cloud, the production team at Sky Sports can then, with the credentials, request that and pop it up on the screen for the viewer at home. So that's the innovation part that we did last year for the first time at Magic Weekend.
How long has it taken to get to this stage where we are now?
So we've done it a couple of times. The company Catapult have done it a couple of times in the kind of southern hemisphere with State of Origin and AFL. The company was founded in Australia, and a lot of the kind of innovations from this perspective of wearable technology kind of are displayed there first, and it's now coming over. It's yet to be done in the kind of rugby union space. It's still Rugby League are displaying that sort of initiative with this. How long has it taken to get? I think teams, probably I'd say it's been growing in popularity over the last kind of 15 years or so. I think I mentioned in 2008 there was a study done, and in that study there was 3 players that wore a device across both teams. This was a rugby paper, and one of the players went off injured, so effectively we had one back and one forward, and that was the match demands. And fast forward 15 years now, we've got all the players on the field across 6 games in a weekend being tracked, and so yeah, I'd say it's an ongoing journey over the last kind of 15, 16 years or so.
Some people are sceptical about things like this in sport. What have you found are the challenges in getting people to buy into this kind of thing?
I think understanding that it's not being used as a judgment on people. Like, people aren't being judged, because one of the things that's really important to appreciate when you're looking at any sort of data is a lot of it's context based. For example, some of the studies that we've done now, for many years, like, it's kind of been demonstrated and showing that generalisation, that you tend to run more when you defend than when you actually attack, as in metres per minute. Generally speaking, we find that the metres per minute covered is a little bit higher in defence than attack. But then what we found more recently with studies is actually, if you look at high speed metres per minute, it's higher in attack than defence. Now that makes sense if you think about it, because a team is resetting a line and they're not actually covering a lot of distance in that effort, because they're maybe only covering 10 metres, whereas if you're coming from attack, you are coming from 20, 30 metres, so you're actually getting up to speed. So I think people understanding that no one's been judged by it it's certainly always been my philosophy, and it's used as an education tool, and to try and, I think what John and some of the guys expressed as well, it's like demonstrating that the athleticism that's on display. Like, not only are these guys having to carry the ball, make tackles, get up off the ground, have a wrestle, they're also covering 9,000 metres, some of them almost 10,000 metres. So yeah, for me it's a big education piece.
I guess is that the hope that people get a better understanding of what goes on the field, because we can all see with our eyes what's going on, but this gives us more data to actually back up what we're seeing.
I think it gives people an appreciation for what is going on. And I think when you start to look at numbers, like, many people can relate to like a 5k, because they maybe run recreationally 5 kilometres, or people run 10 kilometres, and you can start to see, well, wait a minute, these guys are actually doing that in that pressure situation, in that environment, decision making, scanning, having to execute on plays and tackles and things. So yeah, I think a big part of it is that. that education piece and actually raising awareness to the athleticism that's on display.
And where can we go from here? What's the next step in this development of GPS and tracking and all these stats you've had?
I think we really are beginning to really concentrate on video space and actually aligning data with video so we can understand and explain to players not only what they have done but why they are doing it. So the context piece is huge for us at Catapult. So one of the things that we can now do is we can take all this data and we can take the video feeds from multiple angles and we can align those together, and I can sit beside a player and actually say, right, traditionally they would get maybe a PDF, a graph or a table, and it would say this player has done 10 sprints. I can now sit with them with a timeline and say, right, you've done 10 sprints and here's where all the sprints are. Let's look at why you were sprinting there. And it might be that they were actually maybe out of position for 5 or 6 of those sprints. So for me, the next thing now that we're really focusing on is that alignment and integration with video.